Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB YouTube channel, McMullen McDonald, and our buddy Tommy Lawlor for EaglesBlitz.com, who jumps in. Tommy, you covered the Eagles for a lot of years. There's no one even close to being, and I think this word has been kind of misused and probably overused and it's lost some of its bite, but I hope people get it when I use it. Is there another player who's been as big an icon in the city of Philadelphia as Jason Kelce?
I sure can't think of one. Dr. J back in the 1970s and early 80s had a bigger than life feel and was a guy that a lot of people looked up to, and he had a real presence about him. But Jason Kelce is unique because he's a great player and he's a good guy, but he also has this everyman quality that you feel like this is your crazy uncle or your crazy buddy, and you can relate to him in a way that you can't relate to another athlete. If you're related to an athlete like this, it'd be somebody who was a backup and barely played. But Jason Kelce, obviously being the kind of player he is, rarely do you have that kind of accessibility in someone that you cheer for as a person as much as a player.
Yeah, I agree. Because Tommy, I was a Julius Erving guy. That was my guy growing up, and he was like the coolest guy in the world. He was like nobody could relate to Julius Erving. He was just sort of set apart, whereas Jason's the everyman that wearing the flip flops and the Ocean Drive T-shirt, going to the game. Yeah, he felt like maybe I can be a Hall of Fame center. He can't, but. The tremendous athleticism. He just came across as somebody who was an everyman, even though he wasn't. And I don't think anybody's gotten Philadelphia better than Jason Kelce. I've heard some arguments. Bryce Harper's good at it. Nobody's like Jason Kelce. I don't even think second place is close to his understanding of this city. And I don't know where it comes from. I mean, Cleveland's that type of town as well, but not nearly as passionate. I would say it just clicked for him, and I can't really explain it. But he never made excuses. He talks about 2016. I don't know if you heard me talking about that when you were in the green room, Tommy.
I did, yeah.
A lot of people wanted him out of here, and so he went through it where people were criticizing him and killing him and saying you got to replace him, but for whatever reason. He didn't let it get to him. And I don't know where that came from, but it clicked. And it clicked like nobody else.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia, I'm an outsider. I'm not from Philadelphia, right? But in all the years that I've watched Philadelphia sports, I've been to Philadelphia, and I've been around Philadelphia fans, you kind of soak in the essence of the city and the people. And really, emotion and accountability are two things that jump out to me. And those are both huge with Jason Kelce. Because he always wanted to be held accountable. If he did a good job, cheer for him. If he did a bad job, boo him. He's good either way because what he puts down on the field, he knows that he's going to, that's going to be reflected in the fans' behavior. So if he has a bad game, boo him. He's fine with that. And then the fact that he is willing to bare his soul and show his emotions and let you know that this matters to him. This means something to him. You guys have been around pro athletes for a long time. There are some guys that could give a flip. It's all there in there for the paycheck, the glory, whatever.
Their job, yeah.
Jason, it's funny he's from Cleveland. Back in the 80s, we all know Mike Golick, who played for the Eagles, and obviously had his famous career as a broadcaster. He had a brother named Bob, and Bob played for the Cleveland Browns.
Good player. Yeah.
He was an All-American in Notre Dame. He was a good player in the NFL. And so when Bob retired, this goes back to the old days when NBC had Sunday coverage of the AFC, and they did a piece with Bob Golick walking around the dog pound, and he broke into tears because he had retired from the NFL, and he could say the words, but when he put his feet onto that field and walked and saw the grass and saw the stadium, and it really hit him that I'm no longer going to play on this, and he just broke down in tears. And you could see that he was a guy that loved the game of football. It wasn't about the money or the glory. It was about the game of football and what that meant. And I get that same vibe from Jason Kelce. And we're lucky that a player who We got to witness him for 13 years, who loved the game, and we got to see that and see his enjoyment and see everything he went through. And the fact that he was such a good player makes it even better. You know, he wasn't just some underdog who had a fun story. We're talking about one of the great centers in the history of pro football, and it's amazing that we got to watch that guy for 13 years.
Tommy, I did have a chance to do a show last night on WIP, so I got to talk to Eagles fans for 4 hours, and I listened to a good chunk of WIP yesterday after we got off the air and knew the announcement was coming that Jason was going to talk to the people, and then, of course, he gave the speech that he did. One thing that I've seen, and this is, I think WIP is a pretty good measuring stick. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. No one has chided Jason for the amount of tears that he shed yesterday. Now, this is a town where Mike Schmidt took a whole lot of grief for the fact that he cried when he retired. Dick Vermeil, who is up there with Jason Kelce as one of the most beloved individuals in the history of Philadelphia, did take a little bit of a razzing because he was a guy who would cry at the drop of a hat. I have not heard one person go, and
Oh, I got a few with him, Jody.
We love Kelce, but he's soft because he cried that much. You got some of that?
I got some of that. I got a picture. I was right behind Travis off to the side. I got a picture of Travis as well breaking down, which evidently ESPN asked to pick up. I don't know if they put it on their platforms, but a bunch of people put it on their platform. So I got a bunch of replies on Twitter, X, saying salt, but you know, those people are just awful people and
they're nutclips.
So yeah, they're just they're doing it for another reason. I don't think anybody looks at that and says, oh, I don't understand why Jason and Travis were emotional. If you do, you need your own help. I can't even waste time with those people.
I do think society has shifted from, you go back to, you know, the 1980s to now, where I think, you know, if a person cries, a man cries, that's no longer seen as some kind of weakness or what have you. I think people see that really, if anything, it shows how much he cared. Yeah. And there's a genuine aspect to that. You can't fake that. Meryl Streep couldn't cry that well if we, you know,
no,
right?
For people saying he baked it, I didn't get people saying he baked it. Maybe there's those people as well, but
no, that, you know, as he fought through that. I sat down to watch that last night. I wasn't able to watch it live. I was eating it while I was watching dinner, and it was hard to eat and watch that, you know, because he's breaking down, which is affecting me. And it was tough but it was so real. It was so real. And again, that's what makes us love that guy, because he is real. There's nothing that's fake or corporate or PC. I mean, that's the wildest retirement speech with some of the references he had. Just fantastic. And that was a great way to wrap up a great career.
Yeah. And I bet you the Twitter top guys who are saying, oh, you can't cry. Go say it to Jason's face. I bet you none of them do.
Probably back down pretty damn quickly. Yeah. Exactly. The only critique I got last night, and it was late in my show, so it's almost 2:00 in the morning. Somebody actually called and said, and the disgusting things that he said, he used a little profanity, and I think it was with a purpose to let it be the type of speech that Jason Kelce would make. And it was broadcast live, so some words did go out, quote unquote, over the air. And I said to the guy, really? After that 40-minute speech, the thing that you want to bring to the table is he used profane language? Really? After that 40-minute speech, that's where you're going to go? And sure enough, I did take that call last night on WIP.
There's always one, man. There's always. I don't even know if these people are real. Get it? That same thing. I don't even know.
Real. He was on my phone. Yeah,
no. I don't mean that.
I've been taking calls for 30 some odd years. This guy was serious, Johnny Mac. This wasn't a put on. Yeah, this wasn't a troll job. This guy was serious.
That and that's
some
what
people are going to be offended by anything.
Yeah,
right? They can't wait to be offended by something.
Yeah.
God bless them. That's just, you know.
And that's why and I was talking about NFL locker rooms. That was my favorite part of the speech, Tommy. And I said, I get, from an Eagles fans, the emotion is a bigger deal, the remembrance of the great plays and the Philly special and the snow game and all that stuff. And I get it. But to me, as a reporter, my favorite part was when he was talking about the locker room, because I've written about that in the past, and I've said, you know, society should strive to be like this stinking locker room. Yeah, and I pulled it up, and what he said, the melting pot of geographic location, economic background, race, body type, personality, and athletic traits of an NFL locker room is truly remarkable. And we all rely on each other and respect one another in each of our differences because we know we're stronger together. It's not always perfect, but it's better than society as a whole. And that's to Jody's point, what we're talking about with trolls. You're always going to have trolls. I don't know, people that are unhappy with their lives or whatever the reason they are. They're going to complain about everything. An NFL locker room is so inclusive compared to society as a whole, where everybody's trying to pit us against each other. And they're just inclusive. And I've always said, I read about it 15 years ago. I said society should strive to be more like an NFL locker room. I truly believe that. And that's why it resonated when Jason said that to me, because it's true.
Yeah, locker rooms are amazing places in their own way. You know, you've got a common purpose, and everybody's there for the same thing. Let's go win a Super Bowl. Let's go win football games. And even if you have some guys that are a little selfish and are there for the money or for the glory, they still are busting their butts. They're still making sacrifices. They're still part of moving forward to go win those games. And you know, your value is determined by your ability to help that. And players understand not everybody's going to be a star. So when you have somebody that's a good role player, whether that's Boston Scott from last year's team, Britton Covey from last year's team, when you have somebody who does their part to help you win one game, they can have that catch or that play. They're valued, even if they're not a star. But the guys in the locker room are going to look at them and say, "You're part of this team. You have an important role for this team, and you're one of us." And like say that combination of purpose, there's a real value in that. And so it doesn't matter if you're white, black, tall, short, thin, fat, whatever. If you can bring something to the table and help move toward achieving the goals that we have, then you're accepted. And in society, so much of general society is about what's good for me. And that breaks down to even at the family level. I mean, you guys, the three of us all know we grew up a long time ago, back to the 1800s, right? But now everybody sits around on their phone.
Yeah.
I'll go to my sister's house and I'll be there, and there's my brother-in-law, my sister, my nephew, and they're all sitting there on their phones. And everybody lives in their world, right? And in a locker room, there's a blending and a combination of purpose and a work and interaction, and that's why a lot of people, athletes, love the camaraderie of being on a team and being in that locker room where you can be yourself and you're with people of a similar age and people, have a similar mindset, and you're able to really bond. And one of the things they struggle with is when they leave athletics and they go into the regular world, there's nothing like that locker room. Nothing.
Tommy, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just say you can be in a business, and there's just you can have people that work together in a business, but it's just not like the locker room and the team mentality you have. There's just a lot more individualism.
I'm going to take it, and he's part of the locker room, but I'm going to take it past his teammates. Kelce got into each and every single one of his former coaches here in Philadelphia. He talked about Andy Reid and the tough time when Andy's son had passed and how that brought that locker room together and just the guys in it coming together. Certainly talked about Chip Kelly in the first game they ever had. That was a short story. It was great first game, and then kind of went downhill thereafter. Doug Peterson and the Philly special and Nick Foles and all that. And he was pretty good to Nick Sirianni. He said that to come in first year, slow start, the last 3 years, the best of my. And he sung Nick Sirianni's praises pretty good, which is good for Nick. But Nick now has to pick up the ball as far as leadership goes that much more. Understand it's a shared responsibility, and a coach is always going to have it, but he doesn't have it to share with a Jason Kelce now. he's one of the most pressurized coaches in the NFL. If he's not number one on the hot seat entering the season, he's surely in the top 3. How difficult is this loss going to be on the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's going to be tough, but at the same time, I'm a huge believer in potential and opportunity in the game of football and in sports in general. You go back to the University of Tennessee, Peyton Manning, best player in the history of the program, most people would say, played for 4 years, never could win the big game. He graduates in 1997, goes on to the NFL. In 1998, Tennessee won the national championship.
T. Martin.
First year without him. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
T. Martin, former Eagle T. Martin, right?
Yeah.
So football and sports in general is always we always hear the next phrase, next man up. And that's true on the field and off the field. So there's going to be a void where Jason Kelce was, but now you can have a chance for Cam Jurgens to have a louder voice. Landon Dickerson could have a louder voice. Maybe Lane Johnson is more vocal. There's an opportunity there. And as long as you have good people and somebody steps up, the Eagles can be just fine, right? The opportunities there. Now, listen, sometimes that opportunity does not get taken advantage of and things go sideways. And we've all seen plenty of examples of that. So there's no guarantee that things are going to be smooth, but I believe in the Eagles having a solid core. So nobody's going to have to do this thing by themselves. Like, you're not looking at one player and say, you solve this. There's a chance for different guys to step up. And maybe it is going to be a combination of players and not one person. Kelce was a special dude. You may not be able to replace that personality. He's kind of one of a kind, right? So it may take a couple of different guys having to step up and fill the void that he's left us.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. Him in the locker room, it was a sold out show every time he spoke, people gathering around him. Brandon Graham is the one who, and he's not the first to say it, but he says it all the time. We're all renting space here. Howie said it in the past. And Jason Kelce, he's not going to be in that locker room anymore. Maybe Fletcher Cox. Nick Sirianni knows he was lucky to have that core 4, the leadership, the veteran leadership. But guess what? Nobody else has it, and other teams persevere. So now the Eagles are in that group. It's very rare to have 4 guys like that together for that long in the modern NFL. They were the only one to have it
Right.
at this particular time. So now he's like everybody else. So you got to go about it a different way. I think you're right, Tommy. You can't replace Jason Kelce. Can't. On the field, off the field, even more so. So why bother trying? You got to go about it a different way. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. You're going to have some hiccups. Leadership part of it, though, yeah, it's got to be done a different way. You can't just say, all right, who's the next Jason Kelce? Did we have one before?
No, we did not.
Yeah,
did not.
so
certainly.
it's
listen,
probably not going to happen.
It'll cause Nick Sirianni to get out of his comfort zone a little bit, right? And maybe it'll have Nick Sirianni do things a little differently. So it'll be interesting to see how this all happens. And it has to be organic. It can't be by design. It can't be that, Nick Sirianni goes to Cam Jurgens and says, hey, Kelce's gone. You're the leader now. It can't be like that.
No.
Because when you're in a locker room, you got a group of men, we're a bunch of alphas, and somebody just starts talking. And part of it is the person who has the courage to just start speaking their voice, start speaking and using their voice, and to try to say whatever they're feeling at that moment, and to put themselves out there, because the players are probably going to rally behind it, but occasionally the players are going to not respond to it, and there's going to be crickets. So it takes somebody having the courage to fill that moment. I was watching the combine the past few days, and I think it was the offensive linemen, gathered at a certain point, and we're going to, kind of break down before they left the field. And one of them just started talking. He just took control of the group. Why did he do that? Who was the guy? I can't remember who it was, to be honest with you, but he just started speaking up. He just saw there was a moment there, and he took advantage of it. And the same kind of thing, again, it's got to be organic. Somebody's going to speak up, and they're going to be comfortable saying things, and the players will respond to what they say. And so we'll see how it happens. Or It doesn't happen, and the Eagles have a disastrous year, and
yeah, they feel
we're
the fact
talking about
that
a new head coach a year
Yeah.
from now.
they don't figure out a way to fill the void. All right, in the leadership role, I agree with both you guys. It's going to have to happen differently than just plugging someone in to take over Kelsey's leadership. But they are going to plug someone into center. And it's most likely going to be Cam Jurgens. And we'll see if Cam Jurgens can come close to giving the kind of production that Kelce did. I like the kid. I think he's going to be a really nice player. A 6-time All-Pro first team. Yeah, I'd bet against that. I take the under on that one for Cam Jurgens. So he can't do exactly what Jason Kelce did. So he's got to hold the fort as best he can. But then that opens up right guard. So, Tommy, I will ask you, the Philadelphia Eagles, the guy who plays most, starts most games, maybe game one, not the case, maybe injuries, all that factored in. But the guy who plays the most at right guard next year for the Philadelphia Eagles will be someone who's on the roster right now, someone that the Eagles acquire via free agency or trade, or someone that the Eagles draft. Which of those three ways of acquiring talent will be the one that give the Eagles their next interior line? Now, maybe they end up staying with Jurgens there and they go get themselves a center. So I'm just saying they have to fill a hole, be it right guard or center on the offensive line. How's that player going to be picked for that position?
I'm going to go with the safe thing and say he's already on the roster because they're big believers in continuity. So I'm going to lean to that, but I don't feel strongly on that issue at this point because I just don't know the options, right?
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to give Tyler Steen a chance, but
Exactly.
I don't think you can just say, all right, that's our plan. We're not going to have a safety net, so to speak. So there's some guys in free agency that are probably going to get paid. Kevin Dotson, Robert Hunt, maybe, but Kevin Zeitler. I know Jeff Kerr brought him up. I don't think they'll be in that realm, but if they can get a veteran, and I brought up Eagles fans would love. I brought up John Runyon Jr. He's a free agent. He's an interior line, and he should be pretty. He's a decent player. He's not like his father, but he should get a decent contract. He's got starting experience, but he won't be overpaid. He makes some sense to me. Maybe Ezra Cleveland. He makes some sense to me. Guys like that.
Well, and you could be absolutely right. The Eagles could decide, hey, let's go spend some money, bring in a free agent. It doesn't have to be a premier player, right? You're exactly right. I think one of the advantages they have in having Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach, who I think we all agree is the best offensive line coach in the NFL, is his ability to develop players. And with the way you use that as an advantage is you're paying guys, you're drafting and developing starters, so you don't have to pay free agent money. And you can then use those resources at cornerback or if you need a defensive lineman, if Fletcher Cox retires or whatever else. So I think their first inclination is going to be to go with somebody that they have on the roster or that they draft this year, because we have to talk financials in the modern NFL. Financials are all a part of everything. And as much as they believe in the line of scrimmage, they're already paying big money to Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, Landon
We got to
Dickerson,
extend Landon.
big money,
yeah.
right? So you can't pay everybody, so they've got to be careful. So they could go for somebody. And the other thing is, if you just look, I can't remember the last time they signed an offensive lineman of free agency to a contract that was anything of real value. I mean, they brought in guys here and there to plug and play, add depth, that kind of thing. But I can't remember the last time they really went out and spent money.
Brandon Brooks would be.
Right, he's the last one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was what, 2015, 2016?
Yeah, and that one worked pretty well.
It did.
That right guard too.
It did. Yeah. There you go. Maybe they're willing to do it if it's the right guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They have options, right? And I think that their first thought will be to put Cam Jurgens at center because he's got the experience of playing and knowing the system and being able to listen to Stoutland and to make the line calls and adjustments, which is a thing that Jason Kelce rather did so well. We always heard that from Nick Sirianni, that Kelce knew how to get them into the right protections and fronts and what have you. So I think they would value having the ability to have Jurgens do that because he's been around the system for
Right.
a couple
But
years
here's one of the things that will lessen that a little bit. It's a new system. Kellen Moore's coming in with his system. It's not Nick Sirianni's system anymore.
now. No, so it's a new playbook, but
Yeah.
Jeff Stoutland and the blocking will probably be largely the
Yeah.
same.
I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot closer to Nick Sirianni's system than I thought before the coaching staff was announced. I will say that. They're going to try to mesh this thing. And it's interesting, Tommy. I do want to get your perspective on that because I don't know if we've talked to you since they named the coaching staff officially. I was a little bit shocked at just how little change there was on the offensive side. It was basically, all right, Kellen Moore's going to come in to call the plays and we'll give him the quarterback's coach. So we're going to blame Brian Johnson and Alex Tanney for last year. And that's it. Everybody else is back. You got an analytics guy as well. Everybody else is back. The running back coach, the receiver coach, the tight end coach, obviously the offensive line coach. They're all back. Well, Kevin Patullo, the passing game coordinator, by the way, sitting right next to Nick Sirianni yesterday. Those two are as thick as thieves. Everybody's back.
Well, the three most important coaches on offense are the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, and the offensive line coach, right? So they brought back Stoutland, which of course we knew they were going to do. You don't replace him. He's a great coach. The next two were both new guys. So keeping Jason Michael at tight ends, Aaron Moorhead at wide receiver, that's not critical moves. I personally would have been open to seeing them bring in a new wide receivers coach just because some of the wide receiver play beyond the stars has been, not very good. And so I would have been open to bringing in a new coach there. Tight ends, again, I just don't think that's a critical role. And Jamal Singleton has done a good job with the running backs, I think. The last 2 years, you had Miles Sanders had a career year in 2022, and last year DeAndre Swift had a career year in 2023. So Singleton has done a good job with the running back. So really, wide receiver and tight end are the two guys that kind of stand out. Kevin Patullo is a little bit of an X factor there, and you're absolutely right. That's somebody that Sirianni is very close with. How well is Kevin Patullo going to get along with Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier as they try to figure out the passing game? Because the running game didn't need a lot of work. The running game's in pretty solid shape with Jeff Stoutland running that side of things. The passing game is where we need some work done. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I think there's a good chance for it to work, but there's no guarantees. You got guys with strong personalities, different backgrounds, and everybody's going to have a different slant on things. And we remember when Doug Peterson tried this in 2020, and it was just an epic disaster, right?
Yeah.
So there's no guarantees. Rich Scangarello came in and was going to bring in some different ideas, and they were going to mesh things up and was going to be the best of everything. Now, to be fair, the offensive line had so many injuries that year that you could have had Bill Walsh or Don Coryell or whoever calling plays, and it wasn't going to be pretty because everybody's running it for their life. But still, the offense just looked highly disjointed that year. And so we could see that this year, right? And if we do, then there's going to be problems.
Yeah.
But
my concern, you're right about the offensive line injuries, but my concern and where I like the comp, because you're right. But remember, Doug didn't want to bring in those guys. He didn't want to. And when he did, when he was forced to fire Mike Rowe, he wanted to elevate Press Taylor, but he wasn't allowed to elevate Press Taylor. So he had to bring in this convoluted Rich Scangarella. Now, I don't know, to be honest, yet, if Nick had an epiphany and said, I need new ideas, and he wanted a different voice. Boy, I find it hard to believe, though. I mean, from everything the guy has told me, this is my offense. This will be my offense as long as I'm here. Tommy Lawlor, this is Nick Sirianni speaking, not me. As long as I'm here, it doesn't matter if Howie's calling the plays, Dom's calling the plays, Jeffrey's calling the plays, Julian Laurie's calling the plays, Tommy Lawler's calling the plays, Jody Mack's calling the plays. This will be my offense. That's what Nick Sirianni has consistently said. All of a sudden, he woke up one day. People can change their mind. He can have an epiphany and say, you know what? This didn't work. So I can't completely shut that door. But boy, man, I don't like forcing head coaches to do something they don't want to do. I'm not 100% that's what happened, but it's possible, and it's been done here before.
Right.
which is concerning to me.
So
And oh, by the way, John, I think we kind of disagree. This is going to be Kellen Moore's offense. Two key aspects. Do you think they'll be within 10% of the amount of motion that they ran this year? Or do you think it's going to go up by about 20, 25, 30%?
Oh, it's going to go way up. It's going to go way
That's
up.
not Nick Sirianni's offense. So no matter how many of his coaches he retained, it's a different offense. Do you think he's going to have the quarterback under center more than 10% more than he did this past year?
I don't think I think it'll be more, but I don't think it'll be a lot. So that's
be
a
more
little
than
bit
10%. That's a pretty significant change. I think this is going to be Kellen Moore's offense. I think the coaches that Nick was allowed to retain were told, yeah, and we're all going to do this together, but don't overdo stepping on the offensive coordinator's toes, because I think he's large and in charge.
Well, then I'll expand that then for Tommy. So you have my thoughts, Jody's thoughts. Either way, I don't think it's necessarily good to force the head coach into something that he doesn't want to do. Am I too alarmist in that aspect?
No, I think it's a fair a fair concern. The number one thing I would say when I think of Nick Sirianni, the first word that comes to mind is competitive, ultra competitive, right? And so he's got an ego. We all have egos, right? But his ego saw his offense, his team go through a historic collapse. And I can't remember the numbers right offhand now. 5 of the last 6 games, or the last 6 games of the year, they averaged like 18, 19 points a game and struggled, right? And they had Jalen Hurts and they had A.J. Brown and they had their offensive line. They had DeAndre Swift. Can't blame it on injuries.
They can in the playoff. I will say that.
A.J. missing the playoff
a lot
game
different in the playoffs without
A.J.
Brown.
For sure.
Yeah.
But the majority of those games, they had their weapons.
Yeah.
They just the offense just quit being effective. And they would have a good quarter, a good half, and they would just disappear. And so I think as he went back and reviewed that, I think the competitive part of Nick Sirianni said, listen, much as I love this offense, much as I love my coaches, the number one thing I love is winning. And I think, I'm sure that Lurie and Howie both kind of let him know, we want to know what changes you want to make, and hinted to him, hey, listen, you're probably going to need to make some changes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as he studied things, he said, okay, listen, I do need to make changes. Doug Peterson, much as we love Doug for the fact he brought us a Super Bowl, I don't think he fully embraced the cutthroat nature of the NFL when he was the head coach of the Eagles. Now, I think that's changed in Jacksonville because he fired some of his coaches this year.
Yeah.
Right. I think all of a sudden he said, you know what? Because Doug, ultimately, I can remember when Doug used to talk about, if a player has problems, let's love on him, let's hug him up, and it's like, holy crap, dude, are you an NFL coach or is this Dr. Phil? Right? I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, Buddy Ryan. I can't imagine Buddy Ryan ever say, let's love on him. And
Bill Parcells. I think about Bill Parcells talking about the player, she.
Right. And so I think that Nick Sirianni is more of a standard coach, and that he's willing to do what it takes to win. And I think he saw that his guys did a great job for 3 years, but suddenly things weren't clicking, and he was willing to make that change. And I'm sure that part of that came from pressure from above, but I think he was also willing to do it because he wants to win. He knows that coaches are hired to be fired. The best coaches in the world get fired, right? So he knows that he doesn't have just this endless amount of rope, and whatever he does, he's here for 20 years. He's here as long as he keeps winning games. And so if he wants one of the great jobs on planet Earth, there's only 32 of them. You better go win some football games, dude. And guess what? It wasn't getting done with the guys from last year. So let's bring in some new guys.
To keep one of those 32 jobs, I think he did some serious compromising in his own mind and with his beliefs. And we'll see how it plays out this year. All right, Tommy, I did this last night on my WIP show. So I'm going to put you kind of on the hot seat here. I put out what I thought was the definitive Philadelphia Eagles Mount Rushmore, the 4 greatest players in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. I had not put Jason Kelce on it because I try not to put active players because your resume isn't done yet. So you get to continue to chisel away at Mount Rushmore. For me, he is one of the 4 greatest of all time. Who are your other 3 all-time great Philadelphia Eagles? And if you don't think Kelce belongs there, tell me so.
Well, let's see. There's Danny Watkins.
By the way, I have to say something, but go on because I have a Danny Watkins story.
Okay.
Really?
Listen, your bookends. I'm going to go chronological. So your bookends are Chuck Bednarik and Jason Kelce. And what does it say about the Eagles franchise that 2 of their 4 greatest players would be centers, right? And then in the middle, I would put Reggie White and Brian Dawkins. So you cover the great teams of the the 50s and the 1960 champions with Bednarik. Reggie was there in the 80s and early 90s. Dawkins goes through the Reed era, and then Jason Kelce sums things up here. So you get a little coverage of everybody. You could make an argument, obviously, for Steve Van Buren.
Yeah, that's where. See, I would go. I think there's 3 no-brainers, Tommy, and that's Chuck, Reggie, and Steve Van Buren. And then the 4th spot, you can argue it's a steel cage match. So I wouldn't argue people put Kelce on there, but if you put Kelce on there, you don't have Brian Dawkins on there. And there can, you look at the other Hall of Famers, but I think there's 3 no-brainers, and then you can argue about the 4th spot. That's my perspective.
By the way, Tommy, you and I have the exact same 4. And
oh Lord, I'm in trouble now.
We were 4 for 4, exact same 4. And I opened it up to my callers last night. Van Buren got a lot of respect. You know who else got respect? Randall. Randall was close. Randall got
I'm surprised Nick Foles didn't get many.
Foles got 1. Foles
he?
did get 1 vote. I go, come
Yeah.
on, stop. 1 game does not Mount Rushmore make. Burt Bell, Jeff Lurie.
I'm surprised, that Van Buren gets lost to history a lot. So I get why people don't think of that name. And I didn't think of it. I think it was Jeff Kerr who brought it up. I'm like, yeah. And then I said, yeah, I forgot Steve. Those 3 to me, and Chuck Bednarik, and obviously Reggie White, those 3 to me are pretty locked in. And then, is Kelce better than Brian Dawkins? That's a tough discussion to have. But if you're in the conversation, it's pretty good, no matter what. That's how I look at it. And he's in the conversation.
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely. It is fun to sit there and, first of all, to have a team that has the players that you want to put a Mount Rushmore together for, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing the Tennessee Titans or Houston Texans, this is not quite the same exercise. But yeah, and that's the thing. You've got all these different generations. A lot of people don't know who Steve Van Buren is.
Yeah.
They don't know about the great running he did back in the 40s.
Yeah.
And you talk about Bednarik, and we all hear about Concrete Charlie and the hit on Frank Gifford, but he was a starting center for I think 10 or 12 years, and went to multiple Pro Bowls, was multiple All-Pro guy, and so there's a lot of history with the Eagles, and it is funny that we basically didn't ignore the quarterback position altogether, because the Eagles have had a bunch of really good quarterbacks, whether it was Jaws or
Randall Donovan, yeah.
But there's just not that one signature guy that's the face of the franchise. So it's kind of wild that again, 2 centers on my list.
So I got to give you Danny Watkins, because Danny Watkins was the 1st round pick when Jason Kelce was the 6th round pick. And it was interesting because Daniel Jeremiah was here. He was working for the Eagles during that draft. And somebody posted, I forget who it was. Kevin Clark. One of his interviews from the past, talking about the difference between essentially Danny Watkins and Jason Kelce. And it's basically, they both had talent in different ways. He said Danny Watkins had amazing talent.
Sure.
You don't miss on 1st round picks because you misjudge the guy's talent to play the position. Didn't like football. He was just good at it. And then when the adversity struck, he's like, I don't like football. I'm going to move on and go fight fires, which everybody likes to bring up. Whereas Jason Kelce, 6th round pick, loved the game, And that's what Jeremiah said. He learned the most, just the passion for the game and how much it means. If you're doing it just because it's your job, you might be good at it if you have tremendous talent, but you're not going to be a Hall of Famer. And that's how 6-round picks develop into Hall of Famers. You got to do a lot of other stuff. I mean, Jason talked about Jeff Stoutland, Howard Mudd, all the way going back to his Cincinnati coaches, the guys who developed him. But he loved the game. He loved that you're talking about.
You're absolutely right. And I want to stress one thing here when we talk about loving the game, not just playing, right? Not just playing football, but everything that goes into football. Jason told the story about the weight room and the way that the guys at the University of Cincinnati pushed him and he embraced it. Studying the playbook. When we talk about love the game, everybody thinks of Sunday and playing the game of football. Almost all players love playing a game of football. I mean, heck, the three of us love playing when you're younger, right? But the work that goes into being ready for Sunday, that's where you find out guys who love the game and guys who just do what it takes to get through the week. So they're waiting for Saturday or Sunday to get there. And Jason loved the process of doing the lifting, doing the conditioning, taking care of his body, studying the playbook, working with his teammates, going to practice, all that stuff. He loved all that. And that fed into why he was such a good player, because he embraced the process. Some guys just want to show up on Sunday and do their thing, and they just can't stand the other part of football. That just drives them crazy. So Jason wasn't so naturally gifted that he could do that. He had to be a grinder. And that's part of what made him the player he was today.
And Jason Kelce gets to get a jump start on the rest of his life, as John was just talking about. You got to want to do it. But then when you're not, you move on. We were surprised Danny Watkins moved on as quickly as he did. Jason stuck around for 13 years, became one of the greatest all-time centers, and now hopefully he has as much success in his secondary life and even more success than his brother Travis, because you saw the competition. There's love, but there's competition between those two. We talked about losing that Super Bowl to the Chiefs and the mixture of emotions and both absolute heartbreak for the Eagles, but pride for his brother. I hope he's prideful for his brother when he's a roadie. That's what I see as his next career.
Oh, now he's got to do Saturday Night Live. He's got to do that, and he's got to do it better than Travis. That's where the competition is.
All right.
We shall see. Tommy, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you very much for jumping in. We'd be tapping into you before the draft again. You're down at the Senior Bowl. No, you watch a lot of combine stuff. That's what I thought we were going to be talking about.
Yeah, today, we haven't gotten to the combine. That's all we're talking
Jason
about.
Jason Kelce kind of changed our plans. Don't be blaming McDonald and McMullen. That's on Jason Kelce. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks to go even more in depth on the draft. All right, bud.
Sounds good, fellas.
That is
Thanks,
Tommy Lawlor. EaglesBlitz.com. Got to check out his website. He puts up good posts all the time. I hit him up often on Eagles Blitz. That's IGGLES Blitz.com. McDonald and McMullen here with you on Birds 365. Quickie timeout. When the show ended yesterday, I said to John, we need to get a guy who's been on the Eagles beat all 13 years that Kelce has been here, somebody that can relate to Kelce from the day he was drafted to yesterday's proceedings. We got Bob Groats coming up, and I, from time to time, chide him as the Prince of Darkness, which in ways he is, and in other ways he's not. Wonder how dark he's going to go today for Jason Kelce. We shall see. He's got an interesting column already out there. Bob Groats going to join us coming up in about 15 minutes here on Birds 365.